So,
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about other places that you've been because one that's dear to both of us is Athens. You talk about urban wine exploration, so about Greek wines.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your love for Greek wine?
Some of my best friends used to live in Athens, and I'd been to Athens once before, and it wasn't a great experience. So I felt very kind of anti Athens, anti Greece, and then they moved there, and they kept trying to get me to come visit. And finally, I think Mauricio sent me pictures of the inside of the wine shop that was the closest to that. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll come visit.
My arms.
Yeah. And from there, it became partially to see them, but partially for the wine. And I mean, they knew their audience, so they were happy. God love them, happy to have me, regardless if I was there. Um, it ended up being like 3 trips a year for quite a few years until they left. Um, and every time it was just going deeper and deeper into the wine. They took me a few times into the Peloponnese to actually go to wineries, but the majority of my Greek wine uh, education has been at the wine bars, and Athens has a spectacular selection of wine bars.
Mhm. Do you have a favorite?
I do. Um, Warehouse CO2
Okay.
because they are a sparkling wine house. Because
Mm.
I love that. Heteroclito. I love
Mhm.
Heteroclito.
Mhm.
Also because both warehouse. So okay, Athens. Uh, what the heck with the Greeks, and it's everybody associates wine and Greece, right? Because ancient Greeks and wine and blah blah blah. They are not day drinkers. Their
Mm.
wine bars don't open until like 5. I don't know what that is. Um, but both Warehouse CO2 and Heteroclito open much earlier. So that's quite probably why they're some of my favorites. But also, I recommend everyone to go to Drunky Goat, which, for one thing, all of the artwork in there is AI generated goats that are like drinking wine and stuff. This is fantastic.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
but they do flights, which is not something you see a lot, even in Athens. And B, they have this blind tasting wine game that you can play. So you choose the kind of flight theme that you want. They bring you the flights. They don't tell you what the wines are. You scan the QR code, and it's like a game that you play on your phone, and you're supposed to try to correctly identify some aromas in the wines, and it's
Mm.
so much fun. When they first started doing it, it was just on paper, and that was fun too. But now that they've like gone digital, like if you get a correct answer, you'll hear applause, and if you get a wrong answer, then there's like a crowd that's like, oh, like like you've missed the tennis
That's
ball or
fun.
something. And then after you get through the wine, then they tell you about the grape, they tell you about the wine, about the region. It's so if you're really interested in doing wine, and if you're shy about asking questions, Drunk and Go is a great place to start.
How
But
fun.
they don't open until 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it that it's gamified. Um, so yeah, with the timing, if someone's visiting Athens, that is kind of tricky. I like that you're on top of this, like making it into an itinerary almost.
Yeah.
How would
Yeah.
you recommend people go around that?
So I just finished, actually, I've been working on it since like January. Just finished and will be published on my website next week. A Wine and Ruins,
Oh,
self-guided Athens kind of downloadable thing that you can put on your phone. You can print it out if you want. And it's a way to mix traditional tourism with wine tourism. So you spend your day doing
mhm,
ruins
mhm,
and your late afternoon evenings doing wine. And so what I've done with the guide is I'm trying to find wineries that are at least semi near the particular ruin that is being addressed. And I don't like go into the history about the ruins and everything because there are so many different places where you can do that. I provide links in the guide where you can go if you want to read more about the ruins themselves. But what I do is I give a basic, like, this is what the ruin is, and kind of this is how you could connect it to wine.
mhm.
And I give like some wine recommendations for the specific ruins, which I think is maybe a different way to think about both wines and ancient ruins. And then I say, go to this wine bar, and there you can try X, Y, and Z kind of a thing. So
That sounds so fun.
yeah, yeah.
Is there an example of like a ruin and a wine bar
And
or
a
ruin
wine bar,
and
yeah.
grape that you were going with someone who was their first time to Athens, a wine lover who it's their first time to Athens? What would be one that you would recommend they pair?
I think one of the ones that I remember now. So I've been to Athens. I don't even know how many times at this point. And that very, very first trip that I took forever ago, I'd done the Acropolis and I'd done a couple of the other things, and then just kind of never did the touristy stuff again.
Mhm,
One of the things that I realized that I'd missed was the ancient agora and the temple of Hephaestus,
mhm.
which is amazing. The temple of Hephaestus. Holy crap, it's amazing. It's still like almost fully intact. It's incredible. I really wish that they would let you like wander around through it, but no. Of course not. Um, so you go to the ancient agora and you go to
Mhm,
the temple of Hephaestus. Hephaestus is the god of fire, right? And he's always depicted like in a volcano with like his Shay, what he was what's this word?
Smith, the
Thank you.
anvil, and
Yeah. But like in his hammer, and he's like,
mhm,
making stuff for the gods and everything. So fire. Where do you go for fire wines? You go to volcanic islands, which
mm,
means Santorini, really.
okay. Mhm,
Um, so obviously the number one recommendation for a wine from Santorini is something made with Assyrtiko. Assyrtiko is like the king of all the grapes
mhm,
in Greece. But maybe you don't like super acidic, racy, like strip the enamel off your teeth wines. That's your choice. Um, there are other grapes on the islands in much smaller quantities, but you could try like a more floral wine from like Aidani or Athiri. Or if you
mhm,
like red wines, they do a lot of Shemavro Tragano on the island.
mhm.
So that's kind of how I've paired them. So that's
I
like the
love that.
association. That's how we get to wine from Hephaestus, and that's kind of the way that I recommend it.
I love it. That's so fun.